When an artist pushes their musical boundaries or shakes up the status quo, some fans inevitably reject what they see is the new normal. On this episode of SOS, I'm counting down 7 extremely polarizing albums that were often the subject of intense debates online, in music publications, or in some cases, just by word of mouth, which is why I'm wearing my heavy-duty polarized lenses. Many see these albums as a love it or hate it kind of thing, so I'll take you on a quick journey detailing why these albums left people feeling betrayed, along with how I personally feel about these controversial releases that really got people talking. Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. I appreciate you stopping by for another episode of 7 on Sunday, and before we get started, if you could take a second to help this video in the algorithm, we gotta please the overlords, hit the like button, subscribe for the love of music, and let's get started. After unchaining their magnum opus Moving Pictures in 1981, an album that is still widely loved today, Signals emerged from the fog 1 year later, sporting a very different approach that didn't go over that well at the time. Synthetic touches were all over this record, as drummer-lyricist Neil Peart began experimenting heavily with an electronic kit. The other two members of the Canadian trio fell in line with the borderline new wave nature of these sessions, leading Rush to become something of a synth rock act for the rest of the 80s. Moving Pictures was the pinnacle of commercially viable Rush, which isn't a complaint at all. It's just a tight, focused 40-minute LP that took pop characteristics and stitched it with the prog rock style they were known for. Signals was not that, and while it's easy in hindsight to say that, oh, I would have been 100% on board with the tide change, the mindset of music fans in the 80s, even the nerdier ones, wasn't exactly supportive of artists reinventing their sound, a move that was almost always lambasted as selling out. You can't deny that despite that sudden turn, Rush conducted themselves like pros while handing down classic tracks from The Analog Kid, New World Man, and Countdown. The instrumentation is top-notch, albeit quirky throughout, brought to life with the zipping bass lines of Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson's willingness to sacrifice some of the guitar spotlight in favor of synths without feeling sidelined, and of course, Mr. Peart's evolutionary drumming. When Fall Out Boy took the stage in the late 2000s, they were sometimes greeted by a mix of boos and cheers when playing material from their Polarizing album Folie, deux, a title that when translated from French means a madness shared by two. Rewind a year prior to 2007, and it's hard to imagine Fall Out Boy going down like the infamous Hindenburg. The punk scene at the time wasn't exactly welcoming like it should have been, so with Fall Out Boy having a flair for theatrics, makeup, and addicting choruses, selling out was only the tip of the black and iceberg, made worse by the continental drift away from their pop-punk roots. Boo! You stink! Things got so bad with addiction, anxiety, and tensions within the band, Folie became the punching bag for scatterbrained listeners that hated this new direction, and later, it was unfortunately pretty commonly the scapegoat for the extensive Fall Out Boy hiatus that lasted from 2009 to 2013. A friend actually gave me the Folie CD for my birthday that year, since the album had come out the day before my birthday, and for a kid like me who was quickly falling in love with rock operas left and right, Folie, deux was a full-throttle blessing that I didn't think twice about adoring. That adoration has only increased over time, as this is not only their best album, it's an entire band effort that took parts of the machine we'd never seen and lit them up like the 4th of July. Not to say any of the pre-hiatus albums are anything less than stellar, it's just kind of insane how they evolved so beautifully under pressure to create something that didn't immediately make sense to everyone, but that's changed in recent years as fans and even the band themselves recognize that we really did want to hear them sing about tragedy. To this day, you'll have a debate on your hands if you were to ask Metallica fans, was the Black Album a signal that the band had turned their backs on their thrash metal roots? Their self-titled fourth album came out the year I was born in 1991, and if my memory serves me well, then I don't actually remember anything. I was a baby! No, but if my memory serves me well, Black was not my first Metallica album. That award goes to Master of Puppets. But I heard it soon after, and to be honest, I don't know if there's a reason to care about the Black Album controversy when later albums like Lulu and Saint Anger just exist. Those are also two very, very polarizing albums. Metallica knows how to get people talking, but the Black Album was their first bold drift away from thrash, with all 5 of this album's singles being among their most popular, and now at least, beloved songs. Kirk Hammett gets a chance to flex his range as a guitarist, and the band are all the better for it. With the menacing drum arrangements played against the rugged riffs, you get an evolution of thrash with much better vocal production on James Hetfield to make these songs roar. Maybe that's not what fans wanted at the time, but it's what they needed, as this album helped fuel a new wave of metal in the mainstream, and to this day, it kicks ass, takes names, and deserves the retrospective praise for the many barriers and misconceptions they tore down. When the most successful alternative band of the 2000s abandoned their nu metal rap rock roots, the blowback was bigger than Jack being left to freeze in the ocean, even though there was clearly plenty of room for 2. Linkin Park fans felt victimized by their rapid lane change into electronic rock political warfare. I should know, recovering hater, class of 2010? Despite their sweet victory over Maroon 5 that week at a chart battle decided by less than 1,000 album sales, 1,000 Suns found its audience outside of their existing fandom, which is a pretty weird place to find yourself in if you're Linkin Park. That's not to say that the album didn't receive some praise on day one, but it was anyone's guess how the record would strike you personally, which now looking back, I think is a stroke of genius, because 1,000 Suns isn't an experience to casually toss on in the background, it deserves your undivided attention. Fans complained about the album feeling longer than it actually is, with much of the criticism centered around the long samples of historic speeches, excess synthesizer ambiance, and the boring nature of the track list that didn't feature a ton of rapping from Mike Shinoda. If people, including me, had been paying attention with their previous album Minutes to Midnight, the divergent politics shouldn't really come as a surprise. Monumental cuts like The Little Things Give You Away and Hands Held High took the fight for injustice to the doorstep, and 1,000 Suns carried this battle over the threshold. Patience unlocks payoff, leading to heightened moments of emotion like the uncharted performance Chester Bennington gives on Robot Boy, and also The Catalyst, which tosses so many items in the blender only to come out tasting like the best smoothie of your life, while their DJ Joe Hahn brings the anger out on Wretches and Kings, topped off with a headbang-worthy turntable solo. You can't detain me. I have the power to belongs to everybody. The Red Hot Chili Peppers are extremely blessed to even exist after everything they've been through. They've hosted many talented guitarists over the decades, Hillel, John, Josh, and the one that got away sometime in the late 90s, Dave Navarro of Jane's Addiction fame. One Hot Minute stands in a league of its own, thanks in no small part to Mr. Navarro. The Funky Monks were definitely feeling a little bit less funky after a 4-year gap between their breakout album to this, but I don't think they were prepared for the incoming tidal wave of backlash from fans who flat out couldn't stand what Dave did to the band. In theory, wouldn't you want a talented musician to bring their own style when joining an existing band instead of replicating the work of a former member? You'd sure as hell think so, but no. One Hot Minute was mocked and metaphorically beaten in the streets, to which the Peppers responded, "Who fucking cares? Give us more drugs!" Psychedelic grooves hang from the ceiling as Flea chirps away with an ever-steady bass presence as Anthony Kiedis waxes and wanes like the sun in his tropical mindset rhythm. Dave really is the unsung hero of this album that has been unfairly vilified, or else even worse, forgotten. I love what he does. With the mellower vibes, he contrasts that by pulling together stimulating, aggressive riffs from his axe that really keep this album marching forward. Granted, One Hot Minute is weird, and I can understand the hesitation, but this isn't some attempt to sell more records. This is a gamble that paid off, and you can tell that they took some artistic liberties to branch out with spoken word, heavy metal, and whatever the fuck Flea was doing on P. Successfully reinventing yourself as a solo artist is far from impossible. I'd need a few dozen hands to count the many times that it's been done, but in the case of Chris Cornell, one particular misfire album stained his reputation like coffee would a set of pearly whites. Chris was of course known for his tenures in multiple bands like Soundgarden, Temple of the Dog, and Audioslave, but after the latter of those broke up with him stepping away, you can imagine why fans were pissed with a capital P that his next solo album was a dance pop album produced by the hip-hop mogul Timbaland. Ah yes, Scream. The shitstorm around this one was real, hence the number 2 placement on the list. But what many have forgotten since Cornell's tragic passing is that the live versions you probably sought out knowing that they're much better are not what we got on tape. That, my friends, was 63 minutes of non-stop dance music with a rugged voice that didn't really complement the pointless ambiguity of the production at all. Even his longtime friends such as Trent Reznor mocked the album at the time, but to be fair to Chris, the late 2000s were a very strange time to be making music, and most artists really didn't know what to do as the internet was changing everything about the industry. Now there's nothing wrong with trying new things, it's just that this experiment didn't suit many of Chris's strengths. In that way, it can feel self-indulgent and overly long for no reason other than to wander, but a few pillars of his talent appear on tracks like Ground Zero and the more rock-inclined Climbing Up the Walls. Scream is an album that still hasn't registered with that many of his fans, and I personally don't think it's very good at all, but in the same breath, we're still talking about the time that Chris Cornell really shot for the moon and got out of his comfort zone, and arguably, I think it's talked about more than really any of his other solo records. How does one engage in discussion in a meaningful way about Kid A, perhaps the most debated album in human history? To start, we toss all of that noise in limbo and pretend that it's disappeared completely.
You cheeky bastard.
Think back to the dawning of the internet, and here comes the biggest, boldest left turn ever from the English alt-rockers at Radiohead, giving music discussion boards a reason to exist with their 4th LP. The fickleness of music fans is an ever-present character trait you can always count on, and during Radiohead's ascent to fame in the 1990s, many of those demanding Pablo Honey Part 2 were permanently left in the cold.
Hi there. Would you like to be the first signature on my petition to make Radiohead add Anyone Can Play Guitar back to the set list?
Radiohead never did add that song to the set list, but rest assured, they kept playing that guitar, except when they didn't. Long live Kid A and long live Johnny Greenwood, the guitar god who actually found the fountain of youth.
But to sober up and get serious, Kid A is unlike anything else or actually most of us have probably ever heard. There's a dense fog around its icy perimeter, a barrier you likely will not walk straight through like this were an airport pre-9/11. OK Computer was the gentle layup before Kid A dunked on everyone with its meticulous minimalism. So the issue for many fans who would love their previous works is that they were unknowing defenders to a truly sneaky backdoor play. It's no surprise we found ourselves playing catch-up while battling through the 7 stages of grief and all that jazz metaphorically and literally given the album's rather unsettling, bizarre nature, so think of Radiohead earning this polarizing placement at number 1 as the final step towards accepting that this album will likely always get a motley response depending on the listener. That's it for this episode of SOS. What other polarizing album should I include for part 2? Drop a comment, hit that like button and help me get this video to 2,000 likes, and subscribe for the love of music. Here's 2 recent episodes to click if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, thanks for watching ARTV.